Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the PH Journals podcast. I realized I recorded the whole freaking intro without putting the mic in front of me. So, I'm a week late. It's been a rough couple of weeks. I've been battling with a bit of flu. But on top of all of that, we've been hunting out for kudu. We've been just the other day, we went out for blazeback. We haven't had much success. It's been a very, very difficult season, but I'll jump into that later on in the episode, in the show. But before we get into the episode, I just want to give a massive shout out to the guys at Transcend Archery. My skyhook has finally arrived. They're this week's sponsor of the episode, and they sent me a skyhook all the way from Michigan. But like our wonderful postal service here in South Africa, it took almost about a month and a half to arrive. So yes, we had some logistical nightmares. But other than that, I'm truly grateful for the guys at Transcend. It's been, I'm super excited about this thing because, with archery, I've realized something that convenience is everything. So you got to have something that's going to be convenient for you out in the bush. And the skyhook is exactly that. Now, I did try in the first take of the intro, to focus the camera onto the actual skyhook and how it looks. It's great quality. It fits on behind your bino harness. The straps just go straight through here, and this is where your archery or your compound bow strings lean on. And this, for the little bit of time I have used it, I'm a little bit too nervous to use it out in the field as of yet. Like everything in the archery world, it takes some getting used to. But on the practice range, I'm using this every single day, and it's getting better and better and better, and I'm so stoked to have one. So once again, a massive shout out to the guys at Transcend Archery. I'm truly grateful for you guys sending that skyhook all the way over from the United States. So this week's episode of the podcast is a special one. I have not actually touched on this topic before, and I realized it's become an immensely important topic to start sharing and getting across to the people that are not familiar with the hunting industry. So let's get into it. So guys, this week's episode of the podcast is a special one. It's something that my whole career is based off of. Why is hunting one of the best conservation tools we have to offer? Now, when this topic came up, the reason why it's been coming up is because lately I've had, let's not call it hate, but I've had individuals that are completely against hunting come into my inbox, comment on a couple of my videos that I've been doing, and really let's try and be nice about this. Not going about it the usual way by labeling us and murderers and all this provocative stuff that gets out there that gets everyone's blood and emotions going. But truly just really asking pretty basic questions on why do I say that hunting is a best conservation tool, or help us understand. And for me, I appreciate that a lot more than just absolute name slandering out there. I made a Rikiera. I labeled everyone that is against hunting a liberal, which I should have not done. So I do take that back. But guys, here's the thing. So this podcast reaches a broad audience across the world. And other than you guys not subscribing, which is it's still gone up. I think it's on like 73% of everyone that watches these episodes doesn't subscribe. Other than that, I am truly grateful for all the support. But if there's anything I could ask you guys for, and it costs absolutely nothing, is to, other than like and subscribe, is to try and share this message across different platforms to get the message out there. And just hopefully a podcast platform is always a wonderful way to be able to sit down and try and take as much of it in as you possibly can. There are podcasts out there that I generally listen to that takes me a couple of days to get through, like a two hour episode. And the reason for that is because I don't always just want to I don't want to blur the lines. I don't want to congest myself with what I need to dissect out of what I'm getting from the podcast and stuff, because a lot of them can be absolutely draining when you get out there. So, with that being said, if you guys could share this podcast far and wide, I know the hunting community, I'm speaking to the people that generally understand why we do what we do. But in essence, in this particular episode, it would be wonderful to be able to speak to the individuals that kind of are sitting on the fence or would like to understand more without having a negative way to approach. Any questions that come from it, I'll gladly answer them as best as I possibly can. And a lot of the things that I'm going to mention here today is what me personally I have experienced, what me personally I have an opinion on, and hopefully it touches in the right areas and makes sure that I cover all my bases and my points accordingly. So the main thing behind it is, why is hunting such an important conservation tool, or how is it a conservation tool? But one thing we need to understand very importantly is that we have all been, what's the right word? We have all been involved in these ecosystems we have created. Now, South Africa, more particularly, I'm talking about South Africa. I can't really talk on other models, although I've hunted elsewhere out of the country. South Africa, particularly, our land is one of our greatest conservation models we have. And the reason why we do that is because such a vast majority of the land is actually privatized. And not just privatized for agricultural, wildlife and all that sort of stuff, but tribal privatization. You've got the Zulu kingdoms, the Xhosa kingdoms, and all that sort of stuff, where these various different communities and tribes are able to utilize these pockets of land for their own benefit. And what that means is that the pure conservation aspects of those lands or those pockets are solely and completely up to the individuals that inhabit them, number one, or number two, that utilize them for whatever purpose it may be. So wherever there are areas of overgrazing and stuff, it's the individuals on those particular forums or lands that have abused those systems. So how does this relate to conservation? Well, we've got to look after what we put out there. So bearing that in mind, if I own a piece of land, I have to look after it as best as I possibly can to continue to bear the fruit of what it can produce for me. And with that being said, it's very much like our wildlife. And I was taken on a couple of weeks ago when I mentioned our wildlife being a commodity that we utilize to trade for tourism income. And the reason why we do that is because we have mouths to feed, we have families to feed, and of course it holds a value to it. So we need to trade that as best as we possibly can to preserve and conserve what we have, because if the animals that inhabit these areas, these lands, these pockets of spaces don't have any value to them, what is entitling these individuals to hold these animals on this particular land? If they're going to get more money out of their crop or livestock, then they might as well just eradicate the complete or decimate the population of these animals that coincide or share this these inhabitant areas with them. So yeah, sure, there's different things in place in different areas. We've got proclamations which give you bag limits for particular species. You've got conservancies, you've got half fence, CAE, certificate of adequate enclosure, which is normally about a 2.4 meter fence. So there's different ways for us to control these inhabitants coming in and out. So by adding value to these species of animals that we hunt, it helps, or it entices, it motivates the farmer, the landowners, the people that inhabit these spaces to preserve and look after these animals. Yes, sure, different values have different benefits. We'll get into that a little bit later. But as of right now, there are basic essentials that need to be covered. And when we look at that, is that fences need to be maintained, anti-poaching units need to be incorporated, habitat restoration, land protection, veterinarian costs, wildlife locations, costs between the two different ranches. And then you've also got your farm hands that manage these spaces on behalf of the owners and all that sort of stuff. So so we've spoken about now why these ecosystems exist, and why is it important to inhabit, or why is it important to look after these species, and why is it important to advertise and share commitment, or try and get individuals to come over and hunt these animals. Well, that's where the money is. That is where the hunting dollar is carried into our country. And whether we like it or not, there's various different reasons to it. But I think, and my personal opinion on this is, the plain and simple way of it is that individuals coming from I was going to say the United States, but abroad, from anywhere overseas, economies are a lot stronger than the South African economy. So any foreign currency coming into South Africa is holding a very credible source of income to a lot of individuals. And the reason for that is that $1 spreads a lot further than R1, obviously, because of the strength of the dollar. But in that being said, there's various different other individuals that can benefit off of these. And I feel like I'm talking a little bit formal here, and I want to try and break it down in more simplicity forms. Is that I did an episode a couple of weeks ago where I said how many hands one animal actually intends to touch, from people from in the taxidermy world and all over the show, the hunters, the professional hunters, skinners, the basic essential lodge staffing individuals. But it goes a lot further than that. It goes to the meat processing plants. It goes to the guys that are doing the decorating at the taxidermies, the ladies that are cleaning the taxidermies, cleaning the lodges, cleaning the butchery facilities. And then the meat comes back to the individual. But once that meat comes back, it provides so much more, because a lot of families and individuals share the meat, and it spreads, and it's a wonderful way of getting true value out of one particular animal. So what does this mean, and where do we go? So let's get some structure to what are we trying to say. And a lot of the time I like to use the influence of some of the species we almost lost. So I want to mention some: Bontebok black wildebeest, and then Cape Mountain zebra was another one. The Oroby was another one. And then the incorporation of exotic species such as sable, roan, lechwe in the Eastern Cape area, common rebuck, different areas with different pockets benefiting from game farms with bushbuck and restoration of certain herds. Our kudu numbers are through the roof. What am I mentioning about this? Well, these animals were, so the Bontebok black wildebeest, Oroby, and mountain zebra were almost eradicated off the face of the earth. Why? Because they didn't hold value. They never held a value to them. They were seen as worthless, and they actually did a lot more destruction than good. We've seen this in cases such as the Knysna rainforest. Now, Knysna became a hugely populated area because of its natural beauty, but also because it kind of was like that barrier between the Western Cape, so Cape Town and Port Elizabeth. And the Nasna elephants were actually hunted to extinction. And that was because of the incorporation of some forestry expeditions, agricultural, such as livestock, and vegetation agricultural, or fruit and veg in simple terms. It came into tuition, and therefore the land battles started happening. Now, these Nasna elephants you weren't able to much later on, when they never had any permits or anything, so you could hunt as many as you like, and a lot of the guys just wanted them off their land, wanted the populations decimated because they were just causing absolute havoc and destructions. Likewise with the black wildebeest, there were reports going around that the black wildebeest just absolutely trampled grazing rights, and especially back in the olden days, is that grazing became a hugely sought after, what's the right word, sought after space in the agricultural terms, because not a lot of people had access to irrigation, not a lot of people had access to vast lands of grass and grazing and all this sort of stuff. So when fill fires happened, there was no recovery plan for the agriculture, and these animals were just getting absolutely devastated because they were destroying grazing rights for the cattle. They had no value to them. And later on, did only we seek and see that there was value to the actual species. So from hides to hunting them to the meat value became a little bit more value. So then it started becoming, well, during the tougher periods, let's hold on to the black wildebeest and make sure that we try and build the numbers back up so that we can, when there are difficult times such as droughts and floods and all these sort of things, the species that survive with very low maintenance, we can carry us through these dark periods. Then introduce the overseas hunter, and this is where the game completely changed. So the overseas hunter came over and saw immense value into these things, and the farmers realized very, very quickly that they would be able to sell these animals at a much higher profit rate, compensating them a lot better for some of the damage that they actually do. We're seeing this in a particular species out here, and it's now point number 5 on my species list here. Is we're seeing this now with leopard. Now, I was very hesitant to bring this point up, but I think it's important for everyone to understand. And I hope I've got a gentleman I'm busy talking to on social media. He's dead against hunting leopard and releasing leopard tags for the pure reason he's worried that this becomes an abusive way of us taking more than what we should, because it is a more sensitive animal to a lot of the antelope species and all that sort of stuff. And in that basic term is that male leopards have vast ranges of territory driving other leopards, and they control their own numbers by either killing the other male or killing cubs of a female that aren't his, so that she can go and heat and all these sort of things. So there's various different ways that those numbers get, but what we are seeing more and more is that the territories are getting a lot smaller, and the cats have realized there's a lot of easier targets out there, such as livestock. And we've seen it time and time again. Eastern Cape has become a big thing now at the moment, and a lot of people are very, very hush-hush about it because of the repercussions of it. We're looking at jail time, there's huge fines and all these sort of things. But if we look at the bigger picture, and we release a couple of tags in the Eastern Cape, and those animals get shot on those sort of properties, because whether we like it or not, the farmers are documenting these animals on their livestock. And the reason why they are is for one day the hope of having evidence to apply for these particular tags. How that works in South Africa is that you have to have a I've just seen it now with the Aardwolf. I was involved with that. I've just seen it now with the Blue Ducker, Orobi, all that sort of stuff. You have to have a management plan in place. Number one. Number two, there has to be individuals. I'm trying to find the right words now, but I feel like I'm tripping over a couple of ideas that I've had. Yeah. But there's individuals that have to come and do like an impact assessment, I think, and they would be able to calculate and elevate calculate and understand the numbers as far as conservation is concerned, and what an ethical number would be for permits to be issued. So, for instance, not every year, I stand corrected, but from my understanding, not every year there will be the same amount of permits issued into particular areas of land ownership because depending on what was taken off the season before. So this is a very important thing to understand, is because when we talk about the leopard, and there's individuals that now have realized that there are these rogue male leopards walking around taking out their livestock, how is the farmer going to be compensated for what he has lost? So oftentimes we've seen it, I've personally seen it, the farmer would eradicate these animals and hush hush, shut up, shoot and shovel, we call it, where you shoot these animals, put them in the hole as quickly as possible and get them out of sight, and that way you're protecting your herd going forward. And I think that's a very important thing to understand, is that this is happening. This is part of reality. And whether you like it or not, whether you sit on the right side of the fence or not, it's still going to happen until we have a solution for it. But if a hunter is from America is coming over, or from anywhere in the world, but that has a stronger economy system than ours, is coming over and hunting these animals for a massive profit, it compensates the farmer enough to withstand some of the damages that that male leopard has caused over the past 2 seasons or so. And we're talking big numbers. Right now, I wouldn't be able to tell you off the top of my head what a leopard hunt costs, but let's say it's $20,000. That's almost 350,000 Rand that will be paid out to the farmer. Well, through the outfitter, the farmer will receive some of it, but it will be able to compensate him for more than his fair share of what that leopard has actually taken off of that land. Likewise with the elephant. Likewise with a lot of these species that we talk about. And this was my argument about it, was that as it sits right now, yes, on paper, the leopard, the elephant, and all these other species, the spotted hyena, brown hyena, are protected. Certain permits are issued every year, but in our area, there's nothing. You can't hunt these animals that are protected. They have no value. On paper, the value that they hold is jail time and all this sort of stuff. But if the landowner is shooting and shoveling, no one's finding out about this. The evidence is getting covered. No one's talking about it. There's no responsibility taken on what's happened. So what is the better solution to? Hunt these animals. Offer the opportunity for these animals to be hunted. The Orobi, for instance, a couple of years ago, they were very certain it became a sought after permit to have. And an Orobi you could hunt for, I think they're now almost 25 to 30,000 Rand for an Orobi that the outfitter has to pay and compensate the landowner for. That is almost $4,000 US that you would have to pay to hunt one of the tiny 10. That's incredible. And we've seen numbers explode in the Port Alfred, Port Alfred region because of the protection that they have now. So the farmer understands that he's going to put out guys there at night trail cameras and all that sort of stuff, monitoring the poaching, number one, because he knows he's going to get huge profits off his rams that he hunts every season. And if he can produce more rams every season, he's going to get more money. And he can motivate and say, well, I need more tags because I've got more rams and I need to take X amount of number of rams off every single season. So there's some great benefits to have these simple conversations. Am I the kind of guy that wants a perfect world out there and that we don't have to hunt animals and they're self-sustaining and all that sort of stuff? Probably not, because I feel that hunting is always a primal instinct embedded within us as a human species, that we're always going to want to have the attraction of hunting an animal and supplying meat for your family. But in the greater scheme of things, I feel that this, after we've created these false ecosystems, this is the best way of understanding why these animals need to be managed. And this leads me to the next point, is the Kruger National Park. I went up to the Kruger National Park last year in October, and I was absolutely horrified with what I saw up there, because I saw some amazing animals, but regularly. But the reason why I saw them regularly is because it is hugely overpopulated. Now, if you guys haven't yet, go along and check the Kruger National Park episode of the podcast where I dive deep down into some of the big numbers that are sharing. But the Kruger National Park is immensely overpopulated. Now, this is a perfect example of us taking an ecosystem, thinking that it's self-sustaining, and realizing very, very late that it's not self-sustaining itself anymore. It can't. There's no ways it physically can, because there are animals on this reserve. It's vast in land. I think it's over 2 million hectares. I stand on a correction. I don't have the numbers in front of me now, but it's huge. It's massive. And these animals have value, but they have a very small or very low value. The amount of money it costs to enter the Kruger National Park, spend a couple of nights in the Kruger National Park, that is all it is to the particular animal. Now let's talk about elephant, for instance, because I know the Kruger has a huge issue with elephant. There's overgrazing. We might be heading into another drought. They've just had intense flooding. So we're looking at an animal now that holds the same value across the board, because of the entrance fee, because of everything else. It holds, in theory, it holds the same value as as an impala in the Kruger National Park. And why do I say it like that? Because but it has more expenses to it. It grazes a lot more than what an impala does. It causes a lot more devastation than what an impala does by pushing over trees and decimating the areas. So in hindsight, you need to have, some of these elephants need to have collars. Some of these elephants need to be monitored for having for anti-poaching because of their ivory value. So the list goes on and on and on. So the expenses surrounding these particular animals are a lot more than what an impala is, yet they're receiving the same amount of income. Whether we sat around the same table with the Kruger National Park and said to them, guys, listen, I can give you upwards of $60,000 per elephant, and that's just for the animal. Yes, the hunter will still come in, and yes, you're going to have to close the park for 2 or 3 months of the year, and yes, you're going to have to release a certain amount of permits. But closing the park for 2 or 3 periods, or 2-3 months of the year, you're hunting that elephant now for a price that never existed. You're covering the costs of the anti-poaching. You're covering the costs of all the other things that are linked to this species, collars and protecting the environment, well, not the environment, but protecting the overgrazing, protecting the decimation of trees and all these sort of things that these animals do create. And you're controlling the numbers. You're receiving double, and yet you're still having the clients enter the Kruger National Park and book accommodation. You're still feeding lodge staff. You're still creating to the economic ecosystem you've created in the Kruger National Park. You're not losing out anything, and you're gaining large amounts of money from an animal that has, in the hunting world, a massive value tag to it. You're not gonna, you can do it with all the other species, impala, all of that sort of stuff. But to recuperate some of the things you've lost, you're gonna have to put out big tags. Lion is another one. Leopard is another one. And yes, we can argue the fact that these animals are used to people, used to vehicles, and all this sort of stuff. And once we allow hunters in there, the experience of a game drive and all this sort of stuff might change. Sure, great point to argue. But if you're opening for 3 months of the year, the animals aren't stupid. They will sense the activity shift. They will sense everything start changing. And hopefully we can then move into an ecosystem that during certain periods, they're a lot more relaxed during the photography periods of the year. During the hunting periods, they're a lot more alert because they understand some of the consequences that come with this. And this is a very productive way of us controlling numbers, controlling ecosystems, because whether we like it or not, the Kruger National Park will never go away, hopefully not, ever. But also it needs a better management system. And yes, we can say, get massive teams in and cull these animals and accumulate the meat value. But why? If you can accumulate double the value of what these animals hold. And that's an important conversation we need to have, but unfortunately it's not being had. And this is why I say podcasts such as this particular episode need to be shared in communities that are not against hunting, but kind of sit on the fence with it, disagree with it, don't quite understand it. Because I think our biggest arguments are we get frustrated and we always lean to badmouth one another, each party, when a lot of us have some very good points surrounding it. So for me, guys, this was an important discussion to have, because I say it on a lot of my videos. I say hunting is the best conservation tool we have to offer, and it's now putting that into light. I need people to understand why I say that. It's because it's a very ethical way of controlling numbers. It's a very ethical way of adding value to species that should have value. And it's a very valuable way to keep endorsing an instinct that is ancient and embedded within the human race, but also to compensate landowners for all the hard work that they're putting out there through agricultural and livestock farming. And I think that's an important aspect we need to take from this, is that maybe we need to be a little bit more understanding about what's going on out there, and realizing very quickly that it's not just about saving Pumbaa or saving Simba. Yes, of course it is, by helping the numbers grow, but the way you do that is by a primal act of controlling numbers. And we need to do that, because if we can control numbers that are available out there for individuals to hunt, we can control pricing, we can control a commodity that is so valuable to us as far as the tourist industry is concerned. And we can look after these numbers as best as we possibly can. And the argument about how solely lies on the hunter and solely lies on the professional hunter, the the outfitter. If we are going to continuously say, I'll stand by this point 100%, 110%, if we are going to continuously say that South Africa has some of the best professional hunters in the industry, the best outfitters in the industry, we need to back it up by making the correct decisions, not anywhere else, but out in the field. So if these certain things happen, we can back it up with stats, statistics, statistics and proof is in the pudding, photos, documentation, all this sort of stuff. So if we can just carry on doing what we're doing, posting some great episodes, great footage, great photography, but then also making sure that the basics is done right. Your paperwork is all in order. Statistics are captured and documented correctly. We can go a very, very long way with trying to keep trying to push this point going forward. And hopefully some sort of realization comes in. Now, I didn't do this episode of the podcast for any financial gain out of it. I solely did this episode of the podcast to help individuals try and understand why this is such an important topic to have and why we should be having it around camp. So, yeah, that's me. I hope I've explained it well enough for individuals to understand it, because sometimes when I say things out loud, I run it back in my mind and I'm like, did I get that point across? And then I move on to the next one and then I'm like, did I get that point across? But this is such an important one, and I hope there's a lot of conversation that comes from this. And yeah, I think my personal opinion is, from what I've seen in the industry this year so far, is we are moving into a very delicate space going forward. And this conversation is going to become more and more important. And I hope individuals understand that. So, yeah. Well, guys, once again, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of the podcast. If you did enjoy this episode, please, I would really appreciate it to hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications. And if you enjoyed it, drop a thumbs up, because every little bit in the algorithm helps a hell of a lot. Once again, a massive shout out to Transcend Archery for sending me a skyhook. They're this week's episode sponsors. If you guys haven't yet, go and check them out. Go and like their pages and interact with them on social media. I'm super excited about this, so I can't wait to share some of the content with you guys about this incredible product. So I'm about to head out. It's a beautiful day. I'm about to head out and try our luck yet again on a blazeback. It's been day number 3 now. As always, if you are, happy hunting. Until then, stay safe, stay blessed, stay humble. Catch up with you guys soon.